Good morning and Assalamu alaikum. This is the Light School Nushara campus. It's our biology class for 9th. Today's topic is endocytosis and exocytosis and filtration, mentioned on page number 87 and 88 in your book. If you recall, our last topic was about active transport. And we define active transport as it's the movement of molecules across semi-permeable membrane or plasma membrane with the expenditure of energy. We said when the movement of molecules or the movement of particles require energy, we call that movement as active transport. So endocytosis, exocytosis is also a type of active transport. But what endocytosis and exocytosis are? So if you look at the name endo means inside. Cytosis. So let us recall, what does the word cyto mean? Whenever we read about or we study about cell and the organelles of cell or the functions of cell, so whenever we study about cell, we call that branch of biology as cytology, as logos mean study and cyto means cell. So study of cells, right? Cytology. Similarly, endocytosis means inside the cell, right? So what happens in endocytosis? Obviously the movement of molecule, because we are reading some transport systems. So endocytosis, what happens there? In endocytosis, particles from outside a cell goes inside a cell. So whenever the particles from outside of a cell goes inside a cell, we say that this is endocytosis. But if the particles are in solid form, we call that type as phagocytosis. Phagocytosis. Cytosis means cell and phago means eat. Cellular eating, right? Not eating cell. It's that the cell will eat something. So whenever what actually happens, that cell needs nutrition. From where this nutrition comes? Obviously from the external environment, right? So whenever cell feels hungry or cell needs some molecules inside it, so what happens? Your step number 1 for the cell is, suppose this is your cell, it is hungry now, it wants to get some food, right? What is food? Solid particles. So what will the cell do? If you remember, we said that the cytoplasm is porous material, but similarly it is a flexible material. So what happens? That the cytoplasm gets a big, just opens. So when it opens, it makes a pocket. In this pocket, it opens like this, right? So outside the cell there are many molecules. So those molecules which it needs, it will engulf these molecules. It will fix them inside. So how many molecules does the cell needs? They all will come and will be entrapped in this deep in structure. This deep in structure is called as, or this pocket is then known as a vesicle. What happens to this vesicle? The more particles come over here, the deeper this vesicle goes. The more particles come here, the deeper this vesicle closes, right? And then in the third step, what happens that this vesicle is completely enclosed. It becomes like this, and the vesicle is attached at this position, right? Now as the cell has been gone when inside, the vesicle has gone inside the cell, but it is still fused with the cell membrane. So what happens in the fourth step? It removes itself from the cell membrane, and the cell membrane encloses itself because it is elastic. So if you look at my hand, for example, this is the cell membrane, right? What happens when the cell feels hungry? It makes a pocket. When it makes a pocket, all the particles come into it, and the more I am enclosing it, or the more it will the particles will go inside the cell, it becomes deepen, and finally it encloses. So when it encloses, we call this structure as a vesicle. Then what happens? It removes itself from the cell membrane or from this outer boundary, and then goes inside the cell. So in this form, in this state, what we can say that the endocytosis has been done, right? Similarly, when the cell needs water or any liquid, so the process is same for it, but the name is then different. Then it's not cellular eating, but then it becomes as cellular drinking. And for cellular drinking, we say penocytosis. Peno means drinking, right? Penocytosis means cellular drinking. In this case, what happens? The cell drinks, or the cell takes in all the solvent or all the water molecules, whatever it needs inside it, right? So this process, when the cell needs, or even when we are hungry, so we do not wait that someone will bring food for us. Then we spend our energy, we go outside, we go to kitchen, we look into our fridge if there is anything, but there isn't anything, then we have to cook. So we have to spend our energy for that. That is why when cell is hungry and it doesn't have its own materials to eat, what will it do? It will spend energy, and so we say that this is active transport, right? Coming towards exocytosis. So now again looking at the word exo. Exo means outside. Outside the cell. Cytosis, right? This means that the materials or the waste products which are in the cell, they are sent outside of the cell to the cellular environment. This is its environment, right? So in this case, we reverses the endocytosis process. That is, for example, it's your cell, it doesn't need these particles, so this vesicle is then slowly, steadily sent to, then it becomes your first step, it is then sent to the outer side, it becomes attached to the cell membrane, and then slowly, steadily the cell membrane opens, right? And when it opens, all the materials go outside, and when they go outside, the deepened structure becomes upward, then it is now no more deepened. And finally what happens, that this structure, we can draw it like this. If this is your cell membrane, for initially it was like this, but now all the materials have gone outside, and the same vesicle's membrane makes the part of the cell membrane, right? So it was your exocytosis. What you have to do, you have to read your book page number 87, and then it will be much clearer to you that what we read and how we have to understand. So if you look at this structure, it's figure number A, endocytosis. What happens here? This is your upside, the bluish area, that is extracellular environment or external environment of the cell. And this is the internal environment of the cell, that is, it's your cytoplasm. Initially, when the cell becomes hungry, what happens? It makes a pocket. The cell membrane goes inside. It engulfs the particles from the external environment. The second case is, the more particles it gets, the deeper this pocket goes on, and finally a vesicle is formed, right? Now this vesicle, when it is formed, the cytoplasm membrane becomes filled automatically because that is quite flexible. It gains its structure as soon as it is distorted, and then what happens, that this vesicle is removed from the cytoplasm, and finally the cell utilizes or uses the food or water which it absorbed, right? Similarly, in exocytosis, now look at this case. This is the vesicle already made there. It's that food or that liquid which it doesn't need anymore. So what will it do? It will shift it towards the cytoplasm or push it towards the cytoplasm. It will attach to the cytoplasm, and slowly, steadily, the cytoplasm will give it a way, right? The way to go out, because again, coming to the same point, cytoplasm is quite flexible and it can gain any shape. So finally these particles goes out and the vesicles membrane becomes a part of the cell membrane, and in this case all the extra material from the cell, waste material from the cell, goes out, right? Coming towards your other topic, which is filtration. So what filtration is? Filtration is actually take a funnel, and in this funnel then we add our oil, and that slowly, steadily goes to this flask, right? But the adding of the oil, or when the oil is present over there, so it is applying a force over it to go inside, right? Or when we want to clean something, so we keep a filter paper over here, all the other particles come and they make a residue here, whereas the oil goes in the flask, right? So this process, that because of the force applied from the oil or from the water or whatever is there, the materials are filtered, right? In this, same is the case with our cells, that what do? They do filtration. But in this case, in our body, the main two forces are applied by force number one, or one thing which applies the force or the pressure, that is blood. Blood applies the pressure, whereas the second thing is water applies the pressure, right? So when blood applies pressure, we call it blood pressure, but when water applies pressure, we call it hydrostatic pressure. So whenever the materials from the cell membrane are pushed outside with a force, that force is either by blood or by water. So this process is called as filtration. Usually the kidneys use process of filtration, that it leaves all the waste water into urethra, whereas whatever is required, that is spent to the that is sent to other parts of the body, right? So what you have to do, you have to read your topic, filtration and all those. If you look over here in your book, there is a structure given to you, that is filtration through cell membrane of capillary wall. So capillary walls are usually quite narrow. We have three types of vessels, blood vessels: veins, arteries and capillaries. So capillaries are the thinnest vessels ever, veins ever, in this case, what happens that the blood applies pressure to give or to remove the materials, the small molecules or the small particles outside the cell membrane, and that is that it applies the pressure and all the particles goes through the cell membrane. And how do they go out? Number one, because of force, obviously, and number two, because the membrane of the capillary walls or the capillary cells or the capillary wall, that is porous or semi-permeable. Alright, there the term was used as selectively permeable. So selectively permeable means that some membranes are selected or are made by Allah Almighty so that they can pass only small molecules to go out. Some have big pores so that big molecules can go out. So these things, they are known as selectively permeability, that if I have a membrane, so if it can allow all types of materials from the cell to go out, no matter bigger, smaller, bigger, extra large, so that type of membrane will be called as permeable membrane, right? Whereas those which is selectively permeable, which allows some molecules to go out and others to resist inside, that type of permeable membrane is called as semi or selectively permeable membrane, and which do not allow anything to go outside or to come inside, to let inside, we call that as non-permeable membrane or impermeable membrane, right? So that was enough for today's topic, and this the whole topic is now clear. Your topic was passage of molecules into and out of cells. We read about diffusion, we read about facilitated diffusion, osmosis was also clear. Then we read about plasmolysis and turgidity, active transport, and our today's topic was endocytosis, exocytosis, and filtration, right? Our coming topic will be about tissues. So take care and stay home, stay safe. Thank you everyone. Bye bye. Take care.